Today we're going to take a look at the ZEV Industries OZ9c, which is a Glock knockoff, I guess. You could call it a Glock off. But before we get into that, I've got some housekeeping issues. Number one, subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. Really appreciate the support. Number two, I have no law enforcement or military experience, so everything that I talk about is just my personal experience as a gun owner. I won't talk tactics or anything like that. Number three, I work in the gun industry for other gun companies, not ZEV. So I do have my own internal biases that are, leaning towards the guns that I actually sell. But, I'm going to be as unbiased as I can. And number four, I bought this gun with my own money. So it's something that I was interested in. I thought it was kind of cool. So I went out and I paid retail price for it. And I'm just giving you my personal opinion as someone who owns it. Now, I'm not going to go into as much detail on the gun as a lot of other reviewers do, or even ZEV on their channel. You can really get into the nitty-gritty there. There's so many interesting things about it that you could probably be in the weeds for hours just making one video. I'm going to give you the basic overview. So if you don't know about ZEV, they have been a Glock customizer. So they've customized Glocks. They've made rifles also for a while. But they customize Glocks, they make Glock components, triggers, barrels, stuff like that. But what's really interesting is the patent on the Glock 19 expired, and I was curious to see what would happen when the patent expired. So what a lot of these companies that used to OEM, so they used to take Glocks like this one right here. I've got a Fowler Mark II, which is based on a 19 Gen 4. But a lot of these companies, I was curious to see if they would rush out and make their own version of the Glock 19. It's so cool because for a while now we've had the 80% lowers. Polymer started that for Glocks 19s, 17s, and whatnot. So to see companies actually go out and say, you know what, we can take what Gaston Glock started and then we took into the customizing world and we can, tweak it and make it a little better. I'm really excited to see that. Also, speaking of patents, quick little side note, the way Glock names their guns, you probably know this, but I thought it was fascinating. The way they name their guns has nothing to do with capacity or caliber. It's based on the number of patents that Gaston Glock was issued. So the first gun, the 17, he had 17 patents issued for that gun. Then the next gun that came out was a select fire version. That was the 18, one more patent. And then the 19 was when the 19th patent was issued to Glock. So that's kind of interesting stuff. And now we're on to like 48, and pretty soon it'll be Glock 119. So the naming scheme may need to change. But getting down to it, the ZEV OZ9 is ZEV's iteration of a Glock 19 Gen 3. So they took the basic functions of the Generation 3 and they turned it into their own gun with a few cool little changes that I'll go over right now. So getting right into it, the ZEV OZ9c retails starting at $1,700. That's the MSRP. I actually bought this for just under $1,600. So you will see a few discounts out there, maybe not right now with all the panic buying. But the pricing for this gun compared to other custom Glocks, and I'm going to compare it to the Fowler Mark II that I've got here, the pricing is very, very reasonable. So this coming in at $1,700, the MSRP on a Fowler Mark II is $2,300, but you're actually seeing them retailed for more in the $1,900 range. So it's, a little bit less expensive, and that's probably due to the fact that they're making all the components as opposed to having to purchase as an OEM a stock Glock and then, stripping it out and putting their own stuff into it. So some cost savings there. So price-wise, if you're comparing it to another highly customized Glock, the price is very, very reasonable. But there's some things that are in here that you're not going to get on a custom Glock. Some that are innovative and some that are good, but also have some drawbacks, and I'll talk about that. But all the cool stuff that's happening on this gun is actually in the bottom end. So I'm going to ignore the top end for now. But starting at the bottom end, it's really nice that on the compact version, the 19 version, that they include a magwell. This flared magwell here just makes magazine changes super, super simple. So it's nice that that was actually included for that price. Normally that's going to be an upgrade. I think Agency includes them on some of their builds, but in the price to have that, that's really nice. The second thing that they did when they built this gun, they were able to change a few things. And one of the things is the actual grip angle itself. So if you compare the OZ9 to a customized Glock 19, you're going to see that the grip angle is a little bit more canted forward. And what they said is this is more of a natural grip angle, and it's actually almost identical to the grip angle on a 1911, which, you know, I'm super biased. I work for Cabot Guns. This is our vintage classic. But, you know, right here, the 1911 grip angle I think is the best. It provides the best natural point of aim when you bring your gun up. So to take the Glock, which typically has a much more vertical grip angle that can lead to a lot of people when they push the gun out, it'll be a little bit tough to get that sight acquisition. Changing that grip angle is a very, very cool thing. So if you look, it's kind of hard to see side by side, but it's a few degrees, you know, more canted forward, and it does definitely create a much more natural grip angle when I'm pushing the gun out. Being that I'm used to 1911s and 2011s, this does feel a lot more natural. Now, the drawback is, since you're taking a magazine that is designed for the Glock grip angle, so it goes into the Glock, you know, like so. So there's a very specific angle that this magazine is at. In order to make the grip angle different, okay, in order to cant it back, you actually have to take the magazine and shift it a couple degrees inside of the grip in order to make sure when it's going up and it's inside the breech, when it's open, that the next round is actually pushed into the barrel properly. So you can't just change the grip and have the magazine change its angle as well. You have to make the grip a little bit wider, you know, a little bit, I don't want to say longer, but the dimensions front to back are going to be a little bit longer in order to make that happen. So while the grip angle is better, okay, the grip has been made fatter front to back. So it's kind of hard to see on camera, but when I've got like super average hands. When I'm holding a Glock 19, my thumb gets right on top of the mag release here, and you know, I've got good overlap from my thumb to my middle finger. When I get onto the ZEV, while it has a nicer grip angle, my thumb is still on the mag release, but my fingers, when I'm getting my actual grip, my fingers don't wrap around quite so well, just because of the width front to back on this grip. So the grip angle is nice, but what has then changed on it, making it fatter, it's not quite as comfortable for me, and I've got average hands. So I would say if you're considering this, make sure you hold it first. So this is probably not a gun I would buy without, you know, actually holding, to make sure that that grip angle is something that you actually like. Because for me, I like the angle, but I don't like the extra grip size. Now, getting to this lower, it is texturized, and it's a nice texture, but it's not overly aggressive. So, you know, on your custom Glocks, you're gonna have like the star stipple pattern. This is not going anywhere. I would have liked a little bit more aggressive stipple pattern, especially since they're making this from the ground up. To have a nice stipple pattern on here, that's more aggressive is something I definitely would have appreciated. So this is something you're still gonna probably want to customize a little bit. Coming up here to the trigger guard, they did a double undercut. So it's got a really nice first undercut, makes it really easy to get a high grip on the gun. Now, the second undercut kind of weirds me out because it's just a big old giant gap. So I don't hate it, but I don't like it. I just don't really notice that it's there. So the second undercut on the trigger guard, you know, that's neither here nor there. I really don't care. So now when it comes to the back strap, it is not replaceable. It is just one, you know, back strap piece here. It doesn't have like the Glock hump, but it does have a nice beaver tail. So it's very 1911-ish. So while the grip feels a little bit fat to me, the rest of the gun feels very at home in my hands. Now moving forward on the grip, I'm not going to talk about the trigger just yet, but this entire grip, this is what's cool about it. The lower on this gun is two pieces. So the actual frame is steel, and it runs here from the rail all the way through. The entire frame rails are steel, and it's a subframe inside of this grip module. So it's reminiscent of a SIG 320 or a 2011, but it's really cool because this polymer lower portion just goes up in, and one pin that's right here in front of the trigger guard holds this on. So what that means is the actual serialized portion of the gun is the serial numbers are right here on the front of the rail, but it's actually the inside part. It's the actual frame. That's the serialized portion, that's the firearm. So what that means is you can replace this lower with a full size from a 17 or their regular OZ9. So if you wanted to get more capacity in your carry gun, make it kind of like a 19X, all you have to do is get the full size module, put it on there, get the 17 mags, and you're ready to rock and roll. So that's really cool for modularity. And being able to customize your gun. Also, it's going to be much more, I don't want to say much more robust, because Glocks are pretty robust already, but it's nice to not have any of the flex and making it so that you're not using polymer to keep your frame rails in line. It's nice to have a one-piece steel frame. Also, that extra weight is going to help, to keep the gun flat. It's not a ton of extra weight, so I don't think you're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm shooting like a laser beam now, but it is going to make a difference there. Now, moving forward to the trigger is where we start to run into some of my qualms with this gun. First off, it is not perfectly flat when the gun is cocked. I don't know if that's a big deal to you, but for me, I really like a flat trigger. In this here Fowler, when it's cocked, the trigger is nice and flat. Also, because the grip is a little bit longer front to back, plus the trigger shoe is fatter and at an angle, it doesn't feel quite as good on the whole preparation H. It doesn't feel quite as good where my finger sits on it. So for me, I would definitely recommend holding one of these, doing some dry fire before buying one, just because of the trigger angle and how it's going to feel. Also, the trigger weight. This came in at 5 to 5.5 pounds on average on my trigger pull gauge. Actually, it was like 5.25 pounds, so like 5.25. On the website, it says 4.5 pounds. So it came in a little bit heavier. It's not a big deal if you're used to stock Glocks. They're at 5.5 pounds. Normal customs are going to be a little bit lighter than that, like this Fowler here. I think it was in the 4 range, so it is a little bit of a lighter trigger. But what's funny is I actually had some issues with failure to fire on this gun. Now, I'm going to blame it on the ammo because I was using some remanufactured ammo, but it was factory remans. So it wasn't like me in my basement trying to get it done, or some weird dude out at the range selling stuff in a baggie. This was supposed to be some good ammo, and I didn't have any trouble in any other guns. In fact, I took some of the rounds that I was trying to shoot out of this gun that just wouldn't go off. You could see the light strike on the primer, and then I put it in another gun and they ran no problem. Yeah, sometimes if you get too close. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put them in here. So normally on Glocks, when people try to lighten up the trigger, it can cause that. In fact, I actually had a 19 Gen 3 that I put a ZEV trigger in, and I put the lightened striker spring in. And this is just an inherent problem in Glocks, is if you're gonna make the trigger lighter, that's the actual spring that's pushing the striker forward. So as you're pulling this back, you are going to be pulling the striker spring back. And if you want it to be lighter, that means the spring pushing the striker forward to hit the primer is lighter. So there's always going to be that balance of how to make the trigger lighter and feel better on a Glock, but then at the same time making sure that you don't have failure to fire. Now this for me was the worst of both worlds. The trigger was heavy and I had failure to fire. But like I said, it was on remanufactured ammo that I didn't have that issue on any other gun. I put it in 1911, ran no problem. I put some of the rounds that had the light strike back into this Glock here, the Fowler, and they ran as well. So, I'm blaming it on the ammo, but at the same time, I'm not really blaming it on the ammo. It could be the gun. Now, moving up to the top end of the gun, the slide has some really cool cuts if you're into like futuristic stuff. It's got really good front cocking serrations, not too sharp, so it's nice how they kind of dehorn it. It's not really sharp edges, so they do a good job there. The barrel on this one's really, really cool. It's not titanium nitride. It is a kind of like a bronze PVD. So I really like the barrel color. on this gun, and it's held up pretty well. I mean, I'm not going through tons of rounds. I think I'm only in it like maybe 500 rounds, but it's held up really well, and I like the color. Now, another thing that I ran into was with the magazines. If I was doing a slide lock reload, on occasion, I would have something where if I put a full magazine and I sent it home really hard and I pushed it in there, the slide would close automatically without me hitting the slide stop / slide release. I'm not going to get into the argument on which one it is, but it's actually a slide stop. So I didn't hit the slide stop, and occasionally the slide would close. And at first I was like, oh, maybe it's like an auto close feature. No, I couldn't get it to replicate reliably, so I wouldn't be counting on it. Now that's something that can happen in Glocks as well, and it's typically when the spring that holds this down, holds the slide stop, gets a little weak. Apparently that can happen over time. So that was kind of cool, I thought for a second, then I realized, oh, it's not supposed to do that, and I couldn't get it to replicate. Now on this slide stop, this is actually pretty cool. The slide stop is in a really nice place. So once I understood where I was going in my reloads, making the reload happen and hitting the slide stop, I mean, I guess I could show you, but making the reload happen and hitting the slide stop at the same time became very, very easy. I'm used to shooting 1911s and 2011s where I cannot reach the slide stop. So for me, that was pretty cool to just be able to have one nice smooth motion there. Moving up to the top of the slide, it is cut for a Trijicon RMR SRO or Holosun. The cut is really nice. It's, there's really nothing to say about it. One of the things on the sights that come on, it's a nice ledge sight. It's got some nice serrations on the back. But one of the things I want to point out is I saw somebody on YouTube, I couldn't find it on the website, but I saw somebody on YouTube say that the cool thing about the ZEV is they cut this cut low enough that with an RMR, you can co-witness without having to get tall front and rear sights. I'm using an SRO here, and I can't really co-witness. It doesn't show up. So the SRO, I have noticed, is a little bit taller than an RMR, so it's almost there. You might be able to get it to happen with an RMR, but I didn't put multiple optics on here, so I really couldn't tell you if that did the trick. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about is the case, and I will say ZEV did a good job with this case. It's a nice, hard, it almost looks like a Pelican, but it's a really high quality compartment for the gun to come in, laser cut foam. It comes with 2 Magpul magazines. They don't have the ZEV base plate, which would be kind of nice, the +3s I think they've got, but it's just a standard Magpul mag. In the top of the case, they've got a little zipper pouch here, which has like patches, some info in there. It has striker springs, so it has a 3-pound spring and a 2-pound spring. With the issues that I've had with light strikes, I would be a little bit hesitant to make the trigger and the striker any lighter, so there's something to think about. But overall, the case is very, very nice, especially when you consider that a lot of custom companies that, they're taking Glocks and they're aftermarket modding them. For example, like this Fowler, they just send it in the Glock box. They figure that's good enough. So to have something that's more expensive but not get, as nice of a case, I would say the ZEV definitely takes the win there. So overall, a very, very interesting gun. This is probably not one that I'm going to be keeping because I have my own personal things that I'm not really thrilled about on it. But if you get it in your hand, and if it fits your hand well, your finger really likes this trigger, and it's reliable enough for you in your own testing, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The modularity is super, super cool. A lot of really cool stuff they did on it. But for me personally, this is one that I will be selling. But yeah, that's overall the ZEV OZ9c.